Hi there, it's Tessa with Hip Over 50. This channel is all about my move back to the UK, England in particular, after growing up in Canada and the US most of my life. So it's kind of like moving back to a new country. I'm always on the lookout for things that I think Americans will appreciate about the English lifestyle and just being in England or in the UK in particular. So let's get on with the show, shall we? So here are the 18 things I think that Americans will really love about living in England. And number one is cafe culture. I've touched on this before, but it bears repeating because it's uniquely part of life over here, and not just in the UK, but in Europe in general. People stop and take the time to have a cup of coffee with their friends or a cup of tea. You can spend a couple of hours doing that and nobody rushes you along for your table. So, cafe culture is one of the number one things I think is really fabulous about living here. Number two, well, you can buy booze anywhere, anytime. Now, I used to live in Texas, and there are some dry counties in Texas where you can't buy alcohol at all. Now, I'm not a big drinker, but still, it's nice to be able to pick up a bottle of wine or whatever when and where you need to. Here, the only thing that stops you is if you're under 18. But if you're over 18, you can buy it at a corner shop, a bottle shop, a wine shop, a pub, a grocery store, really just about anywhere. Number three, talking about alcohol, is pubs. Of course, you knew I was going to say pubs. It is such a unique part of British life, but the Americans have tried to replicate them, but they can't. I mean, even Cheers, the famous restaurant or pub in Boston, yeah, where everybody knows your name, that's kind of what a pub is about, actually. A pub is a hub. It's a community center. It's a place to get a little smashed at the end of the day. It's a place to bump into your neighbors or perhaps meet up with a friend. You don't have to drink. You can have, a lime and soda or a cola or whatever you want. But it's the atmosphere that is unique to a British pub, and there is nowhere like it anywhere else in the world. They try to replicate it, but you just can't get that really quintessential charm that you find here in pubs, especially the historic ones. And speaking of pubs, number four on my list of things I think Americans will love about living here is it's cozy. And no more so than during the winter. Those cold, dark winters that we have here, we light a fire in our log burner, we go to the pub where they have a fire going. It just combines to create an atmosphere of cozy, especially in a pub, but in most homes, fire in homes too. Cottages, I live in a cottage now, it's very cozy. There's just something sort of unique and petite about it. A cottage, it's got the little windows and the little thatch roof and everything. So yes, nobody does cozy, I think, better than the British. And on the the next on the list at number five, speaking of cozy, is Christmas. Yes, Christmas. They make a big deal about it here. They love it. It starts somewhere in September when all the mince pies start appearing on the end caps of the grocery stores and the Christmas crackers. And then it just kind of goes full pelt right up until December 25th. I mean, you get the lighting displays in London, and every town and village has lights. Our villages have these little trees that they, mount on poles above all the shops in the high street. It's a wonderful place to spend Christmas and get into the Christmas sphere. So that's number five on the list. Number six. So if you like fish and chips, they make it really well here. And this is really the only place you can get true, perfected fish and chips the way it should be. I grew up eating them in Canada. That was our treat for Friday, was having fish and chips out of the newspaper. And there's something about the way they make it here. They cook the chips and the fish in the same oil. The batter is nice and light. Actually, I did have some really tasty fish and chips at a restaurant on Cape Cod. But other than that, I've not tasted anything that even comes close to British fish and chips. Speaking of food, the tastiest treat in the world is a Sunday roast, and that is number seven on my list. A Sunday roast is, I guess you could say it's a little bit like Thanksgiving dinner, but it's something you could have every week instead of once a year. So a Sunday roast is roasted chicken, beef, maybe lamb, possibly pork, and even a vegetarian roast. And then you have a side of Yorkshire puddings, some roasted potatoes, some roasted veg, perhaps some cabbage, and it's got lashings of delicious gravy all over it if you're lucky. Or you'll get a little pitcher on the side so you can pour the gravy over it. But that is a Sunday roast, and it's just an excuse to go to the pub, have a really lovely meal, and also if you've been out on a walk, why not stop at the pub for a Sunday roast? So Sunday roast, I don't think can be emulated anywhere else. So yes, Sunday roast, I think you will like it. On with the food. Well, number 8. We Americans love our convenience food, right? I mean, we love our TV dinner. The majority of what they call ready meals here, which means ready to eat, are fresh. So they're made fresh and they have, an expiration date just like anything else in the fresh cooler. And the best place to get them here is Marks and Spencer's Food Hall. They make fabulous ready meals, and you can have anything from Indian to Chinese, Asian, Thai, Italian, you name it. And it's all really, really good. So that is number 8 on my list. And while I've got your mouth watering, let's talk about farm shops. That is also something I think Americans will love. If you've watched Clarkson's Farm on Amazon, you'll get a little taste of what a farm shop might be. Of course, they started out just selling big bags of potatoes, but most farm shops go way beyond that. I mean, the farm shops that I've seen have an astonishing array of gourmet food that you will not find anywhere else. Plus, they have local produce, local meat, dairy, and you can all find it at the farm shop. And of course, there'll probably be a cafe there too, just so that you can, don't have to go hungry while you're shopping for food. There's a really wonderful one off the 303 highway, which is London down to the southwest, called Teals. Again, it's like you could spend hours in there. Everything from soup to nuts. So, farm shop is number 9 on my list. And speaking of farms, number 10 on my list is the right to roam. And I think I've mentioned this before. I love the fact that you can walk wherever you like here. And there are so many places to go where you will never cross another soul if you don't want to. You can walk through farmers' fields, you can walk through private land, you can walk on the crown lands, you can walk down on the coast. It's wonderful, wherever you like here. And there are so many places. So that is number 10. Number 11. Now I'm going to jump over to something you may not be expecting, and that is law and order. Yes. Over here, they like to do things a little bit more civilized because the police are, helpful. And that's number 12 on the list. Queues are England's way of staying in order. Everywhere you go, whether it's a pub or a post office to get your stamps, there will be a queue. And if you don't pay attention to that queue and you think you can, jump in ahead, well, think twice because you will get some really dirty looks. So that's some of the things I think Americans will appreciate. A little bit of law and order, a little bit of civilization, yes. And on that note, I'm going to put in at 13, and this is going to be a surprise, speed cameras. Yes, I know you were thinking, what? But let's face it, I mean, in the U.S., the last time I got a speeding ticket was about 10 years ago. I was tooling down I-25 from Denver to Albuquerque, probably going a little fast, but hey, it was out in the middle of nowhere. And all of a sudden, this unmarked car comes up behind me with the little bubble light going. I thought, oh no. So they don't do that here. They don't ambush you. There are speed cameras everywhere that there might be a problem, like mostly highways, motorways, whatever. And you get a sign and it says there's a speed camera. And so you can, if you're going a little fast, you can slow down. And in fact, your GPS or your sat nav will tell you there's a speed camera ahead. So I like the fact that they point them out. So that was number 13 on my list. Now I may have mentioned that I moved to a village this year, and I'm really enjoying village life. It's very different than living in a town. And one of the things that we have here in a village is something called the village hall. And it's kind of like a community center. And it's where everybody gathers, maybe once a month. They might have a coffee morning. You could have bridge games going on. You could even take yoga classes there. But it's a great way to bring the whole village together. So no matter who you are, you can show up there and meet your neighbors. You can have a say in what's going on in the village. It's a great idea. And in the bigger towns, I think they do have community centers that serve a similar function. So don't you think that would be nice to have in your community, a village hall? That's number 14 on my list. So along with that idea is the English high street. Most towns have a high street. This is the hub of the town. So a high street now refers to anywhere where all the shops are, where there's independent shops, there may be some chain or what we call here high street shops. There's probably restaurants, cafes. That is sort of the hub of the town. And high streets are really wonderful because it's kind of like being at the mall, but in an outdoor sense. And it's much more diverse and much more interesting, quirky, very individualist. So number 16 on my list is something you probably expect, is the fact that Americans won't have to drive a car over here if they don't want to, because there's public transportation. Yes, the trains are going on strike. Yes, the tube is going on strike. But the public transportation basically works. It will get you from A to B to C. And I think that's fabulous. It gives you options. Everything has been designed around the fact that no, you don't have to have a car here. You can get around by a bus, a train, maybe a tube. So that is a wonderful thing. And I think something Americans do appreciate about England and the UK. And number 17 on my list, I'm a reader. I don't know about you, but I love books. I always have. And we've got over 1,000 books here in the UK that are independent. Isn't that wonderful? So it's like You've Got Mail. You know that movie with Meg Ryan and Tom Hanks, where he was a big guy and she was a little guy. Well, here the little guy is winning. And they are so fun to go in, these independent shops. They usually have a little cafe or something. The oldest bookstore here was Hatchard's, and it's been around since 1797. So definitely, if you're a reader or you're into literature, you will appreciate the independent bookshops. And last but not least, on number 18 is newspapers. Now, I've always loved to have a Sunday newspaper that I can sort of pull apart and browse through, look at the culture section, look at the style, look at current affairs. Well, there's 11 papers here still that are nationally circulated. But here, yeah, they're very much a going concern. And fingers crossed that stays true for a good long while, because it's a great thing to have a Sunday paper. And it doesn't matter what your political affiliation is, you will find one that suits you just fine. Just don't go looking for the funny papers, because they don't do comics over here. Well, they do make fun of the local politicians, but not in a comic book way. So there you go. Those are 18 things I think Americans will really love about England and the UK. And I would love to hear your comments, see what you think are things that they'd appreciate. And I do really appreciate you watching. Bye for now. Hope you're doing well. See you soon.